All right, we are live. Make sure everything's running. Doing our thing here at the Rabyd Atheist channel. Um, I am your host, Ted Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to just kind of stall a little bit while people are crawling in. I'm sure it's been a very wonderful weekend start for some of you, especially my fans from down under, who are probably already heading into Saturday. So there's that. Today is the Friday bonus live stream video reaction. I'm going to be looking at a little film. By Jesus film again. If you want to remember who that content creator is, about a month ago, we reacted to one of them, his spiel about salvation, and that video kind of ended with a kind of a buff-looking Jesus. And so I asked all the people attracted to men in the audience what the red flags of Jesus would be, and that was one of the more hilarious conversations that we've had in the chat. So it was a good time had by all. But he does a little video today. Can the Bible be trusted? And so we're going to talk about that. But before we get to that, let's do a couple of things. One, there is a goal in the chat of 10 super chats, although I only need 9 to do tomorrow's stream. But that's what that's about. And we'll have a special stream where I'll allow guests in if they want to come in, and then also a hat reveal at a certain point when we get chats for that too. So that's where we're at with the weekly goal. Excuse me very much. The weather's been weird because it's like literally 70 some degrees outside, and it's colder in my apartment than outdoors, and that's the first time that's happened in 2025. Michigan is weird, and it has weird. So there's that. But let's also see who's here. Back to the beginning. Cranky Elder God, of course, is somewhere standing in the corner, providing security against the other gods. Let's see. Fred is here. J. Cal is here. Martin is here. Rimmer is also here. Lisa, good to see you, Lisa. Evan is also here. Yeah, see, it's 6 a.m. Saturday. The weekend is already gone. So there's that. Top of the world of Western Australia. See, it depends on your perspective, doesn't it, Freddie? If you just turn the globe over and change the wording, it's all different. So, but and Evan is here. Evan, you are kind of sort of on time because I haven't really started anything. Just some announcements before I begin. Next week will be a little different as far as the live streams. Monday, I'm kind of looking for a video or something that talks about St. Patrick, because I've always found him to be a fascinating character of possibly church fiction. So, but all the Irish get dressed green and all that stuff. So I want to dig that. So there's also, and then Tuesday is my birthday. So I'll be doing a birthday stream, but it might be later because my lovely daughter and my middle child have decided to give me a birthday barbecue that afternoon. So I am going to still do a birthday stream, but it might be a little bit later than normal. Probably will be. So I do want to do that. So, yeah, that's kind of the situation for Tuesday. I've taken a couple days off from work for all that. So I'm only working next week, Sunday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'll have a lot of stuff like that. Just I'll have a lot of time to do a lot of things, so we'll be all right. Um, let's see. Katie blundered in late. It's okay. We're not that late yet. And then J Cal with the donation. Did you add that pentagram? No, not yet. Not yet. The hat will be tomorrow. So hat reveals are always on Saturday streams. So, and then you still have to do a few more chats to get them. So I do dig it with the Australians. I get the feeling. I understand. I do. So yeah, today's my unbirthday, along with many of the rest of you. So yeah, it's church fiction. I think a lot of the saint stuff is hilarious, and Saint Patrick is among them, one of those. So yeah, he isn't Irish, but he's famous in Irish history as the guy that supposedly um, converted all the Irish heathens. I always find that fascinating. That's a fascinating discussion in and of itself, is the conversion of Ireland to Christianity. Because it's funny because the church loses control of that area. They don't have any contact with the Irish for like centuries, and when they come back, the Irish have kind of kept their Christianity, but they've kind of made up their own version. So typical of them. Oh man, I don't know if I can find one of those, Fred, but thank you. But yeah, it's I just don't know if it sounds like something that I would have to look up and find. So uh, rhythm of something they never had. Is that the correct? You should, yes. uh, According to the Christian dogma, St. Patrick got rid of all the snakes in Ireland. Though there's a large debate of whether snakes were ever in Ireland in the first place. So, yeah. Yeah, he banged a staff on the ground. Uh, the story sounds so familiar to like the Moses story that you have to kind of scratch your head. So there's that. So there we go. But all right, but today we are doing a video reaction to Can the Bible Be Trusted by Jesus Film. So I am going to add them to the stage and hit the pause button because for some reason StreamYard's default is to play the video. So there's that. Get the volume up a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna look at Can the Bible Be Trusted? This is textual criticism is kind of my wheelhouse. It's something I studied for my biblical studies degree a lot. And this video is trying to tell us why the Bible can be trusted. And so, so there's that. So here we go. So Jesus Film, Can the Bible Be Trusted? And it's a short film, so I'm probably going to pause it a lot to stop and make commentary. So, but here we go.
Why followers of Jesus believe the Bible is the same today as when it was originally written.
Okay, that is a general belief about most Christians, is that the Bible has been unchanging and never been changed, that it's pretty much the same as it was when it was originally written. I know that that is patently untrue. Okay, it is the English translation that most people have in their hands or get on the computer is patently different than the original text. So, so there's that. So, so already he's like, why can you believe that? Oh, let's see. I trust it as far as I can throw it with a broken arm. Okay, thanks, Jova. Appreciate you. That's three. But yeah, I think wasn't it Cranky Elder God had a comment about the Bible's reliability earlier. I thought was really good. How it's held a door in place, I believe, for quite some time. Yes. Yeah, here it is. The Bible can be absolutely be trusted. I have a door that hasn't moved in years. So, um, yeah, so there's that. There's that part of it. So, no, there's that. But yeah, there is definitely the idea among Christians that the Bible has not been changed. There's a good deal of propaganda about the Bible. I mean, it's propagandized about as much as anything in Christianity, where they will sit there and say the Bible's the Word of God. I think a lot of Christians believe this because you get them early, you get them as children, you keep saying it's the Word of God and it hasn't been changed, and they start to believe it. So there's that. Really depends on what paper it's made out of, I think. So, good book is where it starts. Yes. All right. Let's see where he's going with this. It's a general question so far, but let's see where he's going.
The Bible is God's holy book, written over a span of 1,500 years.
Okay, let's stop there. It's God's holy book. So we're just going to drop that claim that it is God's holy book. We're not going to give any evidence for that. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me with the evidential claims of the Bible is like we're just going to drop down. Okay, this is God's holy book, and it's may remain reliable for all this time. And this is the part where, as Fred is kind of demonstrating this for me, first prove God. Okay, you haven't proven God even gives a book. You got to prove he exists first, and then you got to prove that he would actually give a holy book. So he's already kind of dropping a lot of claims without proving them. And so one of my complaints with Christians when they say it's God's word is like, well, why do you believe that? Well, it says it is. It says it's God's word. Okay. So it says it's God's word, but why do you believe that? Because it says so. It gets real circular. And usually at that point, my usual response has been at this point, well, the Havamal claims to be written by Odin the Wise One. So should I believe that claim? Oh, no, 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 no. Why? It says so. Okay, so just because a book says it's something doesn't mean it is something. And this is the problem with the indoctrination of Christianity starts pretty early. And in Protestant circles, it's usually about the Bible. You can trust the Bible. The Bible's God's holy book. Smattered with plot holes. Yes, it has a lot of plot holes, actually. So, yeah, there's a lot of other books that are holy. Okay. The thing about religions is they all seem to have a holy text. I mean, Islam has the Quran, the Mormons have the Book of Mormon. The Hindus, of course, have a multitude of scriptures that are some of which are even older than the Bible. So it's like the claim that a book is holy requires more than just the claim. Okay, you got to prove that there's some sort of connection to the divine, and that's where usually most proof for holy books disappears for me. So, okay, so yeah, you wrote a book that proved my existence. People read it and went, man, you can still find used copies of the Necromantic. Okay, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of claims about the elder gods too. See, and I buy those because to me, the world and universe makes much more sense if it's the elder gods that are in charge. So it just makes a lot more sense. But this video starts out with a major claim that the Bible is a holy book written by God, and that's why it can be trusted. So, so there's that aspect of it. So let's see if he actually offers. Well, Why is that? You say you trust the Bible, but why should you? You know, it's fine. I'm not making any claims, so I just know what the Bible is because I've studied it. And we're going to see a lot of misinformation in this video. Okay. So we can find that. So here we go. I find it as I believe that only one holy book written in human history. Then from that reason, I conclude there are no such thing as a holy book. Yes, I would do that as well. There's a lot of people that make holy. There are millions of plausible alternatives. Like they made it up. Like they were misinformed. I'm sorry, the idea that there's only one plausible alternative, that just shows you have a lack of understanding of how epistemology works, and a lack of imagination of how people work, or a poor understanding of how about people work. That's just a very poor claim. Okay, sorry, there's lots of alternatives to the Bible being a holy book. Sorry, that's a horrible reason to believe. So as a Christian, I would have found that to be a horrible reason to believe. There's lots of plausible alternatives. Your job is to prove that the one is true. It's imagination. It's not about imagination in that sense. You lack imagination in seeing how other things could be possible. Okay, imagination is a useful tool when applied correctly. Uh, Superior alternative. Well, let's take the Gospels, for instance. The disciples were very convinced that they saw Jesus alive, but that actually didn't happen, but they wrote it down anyway. I'm sorry, you're saying there because that's what you want to believe. You want it to be true. There are tons of alternatives, and that's the point. The point of putting up alternatives to the claims, but we know for a fact, for instance, that the first 5 books of the Bible are bullshit. Okay, because there's no evidence whatsoever for Moses or anybody else's existence. Joshua is largely mythology because we have no archaeological evidence or any of that for that either. So, yeah, yes, and for that same reason, I reject them. Thank you for making an argument. Well, you're assuming that I believe in philosophical naturalism, but okay. But no, but yeah, there's plenty of things that are alternatives that we can dismiss. But one of the ones that we can dismiss is that Jesus rose from the dead, because there's alternatives that make more sense. So, yes, and all of them are plausible. The fact that they made it up is a perfectly plausible thing, because do you deny that people have made up things involving religion? Do you deny that? Are you saying that other religions didn't make up stuff? So that's plausible, rational. We know people make things up, so why would we assume that they don't do it again? And reasonable. People have post death experiences all the time. It's actually quite common for people to see people that have died after they have died. That is a very common experience. So, sorry, there's plenty of plausible, rational, and reasonable alternatives. You don't want to see it because you've been indoctrinated. So, it's a fraud, and it's been demonstrated to be a fraud. Only Catholics believe that. Okay, it's a fraud. Okay, I'm sorry, that is a fraud. Okay, it is an absolute fraud perpetrated by the church. So yeah, you're not demonstrating anything to me at that point, other than you've been completely indoctrinated and brainwashed at this point. Okay, I mean, I know brainwashed people don't like to admit it. Yeah, it's a fraud. Okay, I'm sorry. I've studied the Shroud of Turin so much. It is so much an anglicized version of Jesus, the way it's presented. It's definitely something later centuries. It's not from the first century. We know that for a fact. So I don't need to know how the image was made. I know from the fabric itself that it's too late to be Jesus. Okay, it's not from the first century. Okay, so oh, you're Michael. You have experience. I'll let you take him then because I want to get on with the video. Um, but he's still, yeah, and that's nice that you wrote the two books on it. But I have to ask a question. Did you include the critics of it and how the cloth has been carbon dated to a later century than it could be to be Jesus? Yeah. So, yeah, the Shroud of Turin's been debunked many times. Uh, yeah, I do. I've studied it myself. Okay. I mean, they've done studies of the Shroud of Turin. There's no way it's from the first century. So, congratulations on wasting your time writing two books about it. So, but let's get back to the video.
It is actually a library of books that teach us about God and his moral standards for all people.
Okay. As a moral standard, no. I have better morality than the God of the Bible. I know it's not good to enslave people and rejected that. I know it's not good to genocide people, and it's not a good alternative to pressing your things. I know that those things are bad because and people ask me who told you that, and I'm like, I told me that. I have better standards of morality than most of the God of the Bible throughout it. So got some coin for fiction novels. Yeah. The number of books is irrelevant. Yes. We're going to get to that in this video. He makes that point, and it's like incest. Yeah. Incest is a good moral option in the Bible. It had to be. Um, it you're still far away from a good morality when you come to the Bible's morality. So if it describes God's morality and what he expects out of us, it's not a very good expectation. So there's that. Uh, Untold animals, yes, killing, just killing. My series, when God kills, is I can't remember. I've got like a lot of videos in that, and I haven't even touched the surface of the times that God kills in the Bible. So yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I may have my problems with morality, but I'm not a total psychopath like the God of the Bible. So there's that aspect. Um, I just I don't, when somebody says that this is God's moral instructions to mankind, I now kind of giggle to myself because I don't want that kind of morality. But we go back to the beginning though of this discussion was prove God's exists, two, prove he wrote a book, three, prove sin exists, prove Jesus came to deal with that. I mean, if you're going with the Christian claims, um, prove a lot of things. Mm, how so? No, they're not. They're not objectively proven. That's a load of crap. Okay, there's parts of the book that are clearly not history, as the aforementioned Moses. Nope, didn't exist. Joshua didn't exist. This is all mythology. Okay, just like all of that stuff. Okay, there's no morality that's objective. Once again, if you have an objective moral code, it exists outside of a human or any other kind of mind, in which case then God is unnecessary for it. You go back to Euthyro's dilemma. If it's an objective moral code, then you don't need a God for it. Okay. If it's given by a God, then it's subjective to that God. So, sorry, there's no part. Give me an example of something objectively proven statements in the Bible are being objectively proven. Come on. You make a claim there, give me one. There is no uniform. What? uh, uh, well, congratulations. You're just being insulting. You haven't proven your point, and you haven't proven. You make the statement that there are statements in the Bible that have been objectively proven, and then don't give me one. That shows a cowardice. So, are you a coward? Apparently not. I can see my mods have already taken care of the problem. Thanks. Yeah, I agree with you, Martin. It's like it wouldn't be bad if I got theists that actually knew their shit, but these guys just come on here and make claims and then they just don't back them up with any evidence. Like you say, the truth claims of the Bible have been objectively proven. When, where? Give me that claim that's been objectively proven. Oh, they won't do that. Okay, because they know you'll immediately say, no, that's not proven. So, but I thanks, Martin. We're here to watch a video and critique it. So let's do that. All right. Let's keep
It
going.
includes the Torah, the Psalms, the Injil, and letters to followers of Jesus.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. The Torah, the Psalms, the Injil, which is the Gospels, and the letters of the followers of Jesus. Okay, fair enough. The Torah is largely mythology and fiction. We know that from the lack of archaeology that backs it up in any way, shape, or form. Um, yeah, he uses the name of a pagan god. I find that funny too. Yeah, stupid enough to get banned. Okay, yeah. I mean, you come in with a claim and then you don't back it up, and then call me dumb, but you're the one that's making claims that you're not proving, but I'm the dumb one. Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, so we're going to talk about the Torah. Okay, the psalmist stuff, that's all the poetry, the prophets, all that jazz, some of the history of the Bible. Questionable at best. A lot of it's anonymously written. The prophets are named after the supposed prophet in them, but we don't have any real proof that any of them are wrote by the prophets themselves. The Gospels, everybody kind of knows where I stand on the Gospels, that they're basically collections of stories about Jesus and they're not history. So there's that aspect of it. And the letters and writings afterwards. I think at last count, we can authenticate 7 of the writings of Paul. The rest of the letters and the rest and the Revelation, of course, are completely unsubstantiated. So even today, and even though they're younger books, so far not so good. All right, I'll agree. It's a library. It's a collection of books. So there we go.
It tells us about our part of the story as God's creation. Some people think the Bible has changed over the years, due in large part
Okay, I don't think I know. I'll just put it that way.
to the multitude of translations that exist. The Bible was originally written in 3 languages and has since been translated numerous times so everyone can read the Word of God in their own language.
Largely true. The Old Testament is Hebrew and then Aramaic later, and then the New Testament is written in Greek. So largely true. As far as manuscripts of all this stuff, the thing with translations is you lose something in translation. There's sometimes word concepts that don't exist that exist in other languages, so you have to do an equivalent. So you're always going to lose something in a translation from any original text because sometimes languages just don't have words that mean the same things. So then you also it's not the reason of multiple translations that's the case, although that is part of the argument. It's also the fact that within these original texts in the original languages, there's variants. There's There's also definitely changes to the text at times. There's additions, there's subtractions from the text. You study all that in textual criticism, but it's like, it's the reason we know that the Bible has been edited and altered is we can see the editing and altering in the various texts that we have. So there's that. He's a Darth Dawkins wannabe. Okay, fair enough. I don't put up with Darth Dawkins either, although he's never showed up to my channel to get banned. So, it's a good movie. Oh. Oh. Hey, Randy. Good to see you. Yeah, we've been around. Is the only proper version. I know you don't believe that, but and you know what? I'm going to tell you why that's a kind of an irrelevant question. Because every translation has its flaws and its strengths. And if you really want to dig into the Bible, just pick up like 4 or 5 English translations or whatever language you speak and then compare them. And what you will see, and this is a good trick, is you'll see where the translators are struggling. Because if it comes off as like 3 different translations of a certain word, then you know that there's an argument among the translators as to how that should be translated. But yeah, it's overrated. Okay, fair enough. Some people liked it, some people don't. But yeah, it's the issue of what translation like I use, just whatever one I'm using, you can pick 3 others and look at them too. Because I know too much about translation now to think that it's a completely accurate process. Yeah, it's good that we're using the same reference. Most of the time, I'm either using the NIV or the NASB, the New American Standard, or the International Version. So those are probably the 2 that I use the most commonly. But yeah, but if you really don't know original languages and you still want to dig into this stuff, grabbing about 4 or 5 translations and comparing them is a good way to go, because you'll see where translators have problems with certain words and certain texts and stuff like that. And the Bible is a good example of that. He's going to give a reference that I'm going to find very interesting near the end of this video. Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. I have a great grandfather who also wrote a lot of the hymns that you still see in the text in hymn books today. He's one of the Ackleys that wrote a lot of those hymns back in the day. So I have church history in my blood too. Translation. I don't know. It's just I've done it enough to know that my translations were just as good as anybody else's. And the text of the Bible, for instance, has been so translated so many times that you know where the problem areas are. So yeah, so there's that aspect of it. So, but let's see where he's going to go. He's going to try to give some evidence of why we can trust the Bible.
Some languages even have multiple translations, but they all hold the same message. Every copy of the Bible is a translation of the original texts and can be checked against them.
True, you can check any translation of the Bible against the original text, but what you will also discover that translations also have the problem of the fact that sometimes even the translator is having difficulty getting one meaning from one thing to another. Languages develop separately, and so sometimes there just isn't a good way to translate something. And so you have to get really wordy to do that. I have not read that one though. Okay. I get it. But yeah, translation's a fascinating subject. But yeah, what the video content creator doesn't seem to realize is that you can translate this, check it against the original text, but you will find different translations of different words, and they all check out because it's what we know. Yeah, we really don't. He's going to talk about, there's only bits. If we have bits and fragments of anything, it's usually like maybe an original copy is the best you can say we have. And don't get me wrong, New Testament textual criticism is probably better than most. We really do kind of know what the text says more than most, but it still has its problems. It just still doesn't prove the truth claims, though. The truth claims of the text are a separate matter than the accuracy of the text. So, yeah, and then, yeah, if God did it. He, so there's that. Oh.
Believe the Bible is the same today as when it was originally written.
Oh, I jumped. Here we go.
Multitude of translations that exist. The Bible was originally written in 3 languages. You can read the Word of God in their own language. Some languages even have multiple translations, but they all hold the same message. Every copy of the Bible is a translation of the original text and can be checked against them. A myriad of archaeological evidence validates modern translations. For example, 981 ancient Bible manuscripts composed between the 3rd century BC and the 1st century AD were discovered near the Dead Sea during the mid-20th century. One of these manuscripts is the Great Isaiah Scroll.
Okay, before he gets into the Great Isaiah Scroll, I want to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls, because what you get is the claim that the Old Testament text hasn't changed very much at all. And even there's Dead Sea scholars that when they hear stuff like that, they roll their eyes, because there has definitely been some transcription changes over the years from other texts. Like there are variants in the Hebrew text because of the Dead Sea Scrolls being discovered. So it's not like believers always make this sound so cut and dry, like all of those finds of the Dead Sea Scrolls just back up the Old Testament. And, it shows that there's no scribal transmission errors. What a wonderfully preserved text we have. And anybody who's studied the Dead Sea Scrolls or even read them knows that that's bullshit. Okay. Like there have been changes, and some of the Dead Sea Scrolls read differently than other Hebrew texts and other Aramaic texts. So that's not true. So there are textual variants in the Hebrew text as well. And so there's a lot of stuff that people say that's over embellishing. And the Dead Sea Scrolls is one of those places where people like to over embellish. There's definitely some differences in text, whether they're significant or not. I think there's a couple that are significant, but the Dead Sea Scrolls also preserve other books of the Bible, like I think, or books that are outside the Bible, like the Book of Enoch is among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a selective use of the idea of the Dead Sea Scrolls that bothers me. Like it verifies the Bible, but it doesn't verify these other books because we don't accept those other books, kind of thing. So, so there's that. But before he's going to talk here about the long book of Isaiah, and it's an interesting discussion, but it doesn't prove anything.
Great Isaiah Scroll. It includes all 66 chapters of the book of Isaiah, a book that prophesied about the life and death of Jesus Christ.
Whether it prophesied about the life and death of Jesus Christ is a matter of opinion. I just want to inject that right there, because he's making a claim there that is a post hoc claim, looking at the supposed life of Jesus in the text of Isaiah. But yes, it does contain all 66 books of Isaiah, of chapters of Isaiah. It's a complete text, but it just shows that by the 1st century, BCE, the people of the Qumran communities that were using this text believed that Isaiah was, and translated it and packaged it as one book. The only thing this really did was, at the time before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, there were a lot of Christians and theologians that thought Isaiah was two separate books, that at the end of chapter 39, the first book of Isaiah ended and then the second book of Isaiah started. The only thing the discovery of this scroll really did is end that and say, well, no. But it doesn't do anything for the truth claims that the book of Isaiah says. So there's that. That's the issue, because the problem with this video creator, Katie, is he thinks that having all these texts proves that they're true, that the claims within them are true, and that's a separate issue. So, I don't get that. A lot of these people use this text stuff as proof of their faith, and it's like, it doesn't prove anything. It just proves that the text might be accurate. It doesn't prove a damn thing about the truth claims of the text. So, yeah. Yes, Katie would definitely know the proper uses of manure, regardless of the source. Yes, in the Isaiah scroll, there's also variants with other Isaiah texts that we have. The idea that the Old Testament has very few variants is just not true. It's an overpushed claim, because early on they didn't see a lot of variants from texts that were translated in 1000 AD. And so, yeah, the transcription process, like the thing with the Jews with their holy book, is they consider it so holy that if they make a mistake in copying it by hand, they will burn the whole thing. And so they are very cautious when they copy the text. That's all that really proves. It doesn't, once again, you still haven't proved a damn thing about the truth claims. So there's that. Oh man. So yeah, but it's it's a selective evidence. They like this, Martin. They like to pick and choose. Also among the Dead Sea Scrolls are things like the Book of Enoch, and a very well preserved copy of the Book of Enoch, for that matter. But nobody's running to saying that this makes the Book of Enoch true. There's also a lot of like correspondence and other books that have been preserved there, and nobody's calling them Holy Writ just because they found them. So there's that. So there's that.
The Great Isaiah Scroll is the same as the Book of Isaiah in the modern Bible.
No, not completely. Not completely. That's not completely true. So I want to make sure that, so that's well understood, that, yeah, there's variance between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the modern translations. So, because there's variance in the Hebrew text as well.
The of the Bible that tells us about Jesus was composed by his disciples, who lived during his lifetime in the 1st century.
That, once again, is a claim without any evidence. All the New Testament was composed by his disciples in the 1st century. Well, first of all, let's start with all of them. The Gospels do not name the authors themselves. There is no, within internal text, there is no mention of the author's name. And each story in the Gospels doesn't have any testimony of where it came from. So once again, I don't know where he's getting the evidence for this claim, other than Christians want to believe it. As far as the letters in it, Paul wrote in the 1st century, but that's about all we know. And we don't even think 6 of his books, supposed books, are even his. So yeah, that's a claim without evidence, and not an accurate representation of what we actually have. I find it funny that they still continue to do that. So, yeah, it's a popular belief. among Christians, so they keep propagating it. And I just don't have time for it anymore most of the time.
They sent their writings to multiple regions where other disciples affirmed the truth of what was written, copied it, and sent it to more followers of.
Okay, he makes a claim in there that other people affirmed what was in it. And I would like to see those affirmations. I would like to see where the disciples affirmed what was in the Gospels and what was in the letters. It's kind of a hidden little claim that he throws in there, but it's like I don't know what he's talking about when he's talking about these affirmations that other disciples affirmed what was in the text. Where is that? I mean, Paul talks in such a way that he pretty much indicates he never met Jesus personally, except at the vision he had on the road to Damascus. So even his authentic writings, he doesn't affirm a lot of the events of Jesus Christ in the Gospels because he wasn't there. And the rest of them, because they're anonymously written or questionably written, we can't know that for sure either. So I'm trying to figure out where he has the gall, quite frankly, to make the claim that other apostles affirmed all this. Okay. I just I don't get that one. I mean, I would like to see his evidence on that one. So, but I don't see any kind of evidence that suddenly the rest of these apostles affirmed what the other apostles written. And the initial claim that they're written by eyewitnesses, like the Gospels, there's no evidence for that. Okay, it's like it. My whole point in questionable witnesses that theists seem to skip right over is you don't have an attestation of who wrote these books or where the individual stories in them came from. You have four anonymous authors collecting the stories of Jesus from whatever sources they're collecting them from, and they don't tell us who those sources are, and they don't even tell us who they are. Okay, that's not good evidence of historicity. That's good evidence of a bunch of story collections, but it doesn't prove that they're history or anything like that. And of course, as many times I tell people, there is no outside sources that affirm any of these things. So there's that. Hey, Beck. And then Bren's here. Welcome. But yeah, I don't, man. This point in the video, when I heard it the first time, I'm like, what the literal hell are you talking about, dude? Which apostles are reaffirming which apostles? Do you have their names? Because I don't see it. I mean, even in the text of the New Testament, where is that? Okay. Paul, I mentioned Paul because he's one of the few that we can attest to and has better historical evidence for his existence than Jesus does. He doesn't talk about Jesus's life enough to say that he's affirming anything. I mean, you could say 1 Corinthians 15, he says that these are all the witnesses of the resurrection, but it's like, what you've given me is a list of people that might have had individual, hallucinogenic experiences where they thought that they saw Jesus. They believed very sincerely they thought Jesus, and that's all you've given me. But you haven't given me any attestation to the authenticity of any of this. So yeah, it's kind of like everybody agreed with this and everybody thought this was true, so therefore it's true. But it's like you're just copying stuff. Paul wasn't a lawyer, no. Yeah, no affidavits, no briefs, no. Paul wasn't a lawyer, and so he just doesn't provide good evidence of things either. Because it's strange that this omnipotent God, omniscient God that inspires this book can't discern the future enough of what would constitute good evidence to certain groups of people later and then provide it. Yeah, we can we can believe a lot of things. Okay, we believe a lot of wrong things. It's possible that they could have just copied the symbols. Those scribes were up back then. I don't deny that the people that copied these things were literate. They just made a lot of mistakes because they're just copying stuff by hand. And I don't think they were as careful because I'm not sure that the early church thought a lot of these were holy writ. Okay. That's a later theological development that these writings became holy writ later. So in the minds of people, but let's see where he goes.
Jesus. More than 25,000 copies of ancient Bible manuscripts that tell of Jesus have been recovered.
I don't know where he's getting that number, but I would also say, so what? Just because you have a lot of copies of something doesn't make it true. I mean, there's lots of copies of, Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings, doesn't make them true. There's lots of copies of the Hindu scriptures, that doesn't make them true. Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying, Rimmer. It's quite possible that they were just copying what they saw on a page, and that is very, very real, much a possibility. It's why when they make mistakes, it would explain why when some of them make mistakes and don't copy it accurately, it would explain why they didn't think it was a big deal and just, moved on. Okay, because, well, it's close enough. The symbols look sort of kind of the same. So, yeah, that would explain it. I don't know. I prefer English because I can read it. But yeah, we're going to get to the Latin stuff here in a bit because he's going to go down that rabbit hole. I can't wait.
All of which match one another and are the same as the modern Bible.
That is a very grandiose claim that they all match each other and are same as the modern Bible. That is not true. If that was the case, there wouldn't be so many textual variants. There's tons of textual variants in all the New Testament scriptures. I spent an entire semester at Trinity studying these textual variants. So so there's that. But yeah, you're doing a spoiler here. He's going to go there. So
There's even a complete Bible written in Greek on display in the British Library. This Bible, the Codex Sinaiticus, is dated around 350 AD and is exactly the same as the modern Bible.
All right, that last claim there, that's utter bullshit. Okay, it is not the same as the modern Bible. Couple of things. The Codex Sinaiticus is how we know, like, the longer ending of Mark is a later edition because it doesn't have it. It also doesn't have the story of the woman caught in adultery. There are many verses of scripture that it does not have that later editions do have. So his claim that it's exactly the same as the modern Bible, that is a load of horseshit. I would also say, like, there's other aspects to it. Like, it doesn't have the same contents as the modern Bible. It only has fragments of Genesis, Leviticus, and Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It has fragments of Joshua. It doesn't have the whole thing. It has fragments of Judges, only part of First Chronicles, like First and Second Kings, Second Chronicles, and other books are just not there. It also has some additions, like the Book of Tobit, the Maccabees. It has the Minor Prophets, but it doesn't have the Book of Hosea, for instance. It has the Wisdom of Syriac in it, in the Old Testament parts. And then you get to the New Testament parts where it does indeed have, like, all of the 27 books of the New Testament, but it also has two others, the Epistle of Barnabas and the Shepherd of Hermas, which Protestants don't accept. So his thoughts that it's exactly the same as the modern Bible, that's a straight up lie, and he should know better. It's not the same at all. And at this point is where I would say the video crosses over from trying to be an apologetic to being straight bold-faced propaganda, trying to uphold the Bible, because that's just not true. And all you have to do is look up the Codex Sinaiticus on Wikipedia and figure out, oh, these are not the same. Okay, it's like, I don't know why these apologist channels think that they can make claims like this and not be called on it, but it's not the same. I just don't get it how they think that. So there's that. But you can see the Codex Sinaiticus in the British Library, I believe, to this day. So if you live in Britain, you can go see it. But it's still 350 years removed, at least 300 years removed from the original events. And a lot can happen in 3 centuries. So, but, other things with Sinaiticus, it lines up more with like the Vatican codex that we have. And doesn't line up with like Eastern texts from more the Eastern Church. So there's definitely like the Sinaiticus seems to maybe be a little bit younger in truth than the Vatican Bible, and seems to be trying to line up with it. But to make the claim that it's exactly the same as the modern Bible, that's a load of horseshit. I don't understand that at all. That's, it's like, please at least like include scholarship and the differences, because there are some books of the Bible that Sinaiticus has that the modern Bible doesn't, and then there's some books that it leaves out that the modern Bible has. And the Old Testament part is really bad because it's so damaged at that point. So, so yeah, it's really lying here at this point, because for him to make that statement, I'm like, really? That's most Bible scholars that are Christian would have yelled about that. Like, it's like, no, that's not true. Okay. When we did text or criticism in my last semester of Greek class at Trinity, we talked about Sinaiticus and the Vulgates and all the various translations and stuff as ways of proving the text. And our professor went over this one and said, yeah, there's missing parts and added books and stuff like that. But it is the earliest representation of like the 27 books of the New Testament in the order that we currently have them. And that's kind of why the order has been maintained by this book. So it shows that the early Christians had an order to their books and they kept it. That's about it. So for me on that one. Yeah, Marcion's Bible only had when he canonized the Bible, he got rid of a lot of it because he didn't like it. Talk about a guy who had a theology before he decided which texts backed up his theology. That was definitely Marcion. So, but he's probably better than most. At least he was being honest about it. All right, let's see what else this guy has to say.
The Bible has the most recovered copies of any ancient text.
Yeah, it does. And that's because people have made concerted efforts to do so. Like the very aforementioned Sinaiticus is the result of some guy visiting a monastery, and he was just visiting monasteries looking for old copies of the Bible and just happened to find it. That's the thing about those old monasteries. They didn't seem really keen on protecting old copies of the Bible. It's almost like they knew that they were editing things and making things more modern all the time. So there's that. So yeah, there's also the fact that that's not completely accurate. There are other texts in antiquity that have more copies. So, and all that really proves is that people like the book enough to copy it. Once again, if I copy off the have them all 3 million more times, does that make it more true? It's like the truth claims of a text and how many times it's copied don't have anything to do with each other. So it just doesn't. Oh. Yeah. See, checking chat here. And there's that. All right. But yeah, another horseshit statement. Yeah, this is the thing. It's like when you have a religion that's in control and they decide to copy things a lot. Yeah, same thing. You're going to get a lot of copies because the Christians like the Bible, you know. But they always bring out that multiple copies as if it's not a question of just how many copies you have. Does the manuscript have good quality to it? Does it look like they took time with it, or was it a rush job? And you can tell these things, you know, just like today. If you have a friend that writes you a letter out and takes their time with it, it's probably more carefully written than something they scribbled on a thing and handed to you in the hall. And you can tell that with the text of the scriptures too, you know, the supposed scriptures. But yeah, they copied it a lot. And because there was a lot of haste, sometimes you see the errors creeping in. We can track errors in the translation, the transmission of the text. So, and tell kind of where they came from. So there's that. The thing that was good enough to be learned by heart by people did with works. Yes, exactly. It's if you deal with that issue completely, it's like just because something's popular doesn't mean it's true. But you know, it's not only, you know, you have a good quality of text, you're also looking at how close it is to the original writing because there's less chance for errors to creep in. But by the time Sinaiticus comes around, it's been 300 years of transcribal errors that it could be drawing from. And so, though it's a real good archaeological find for the text of the New Testament in particular, it's still not incapable of having errors creep. It has verses in it that don't appear in later texts, and it has other things that it omits that later texts have. You know, most notably, you know, the woman caught in adultery and the longer ending of Mark are not in it, and it's older. So it's kind of our proof that the Bible's been edited and added to over the centuries. So the idea that it hasn't changed or hasn't been edited, that's just complete horse hockey, as Sherman Potter would say. So, yep, you can always head over to Discord to discuss things more. And Bren runs that up for me. I don't necessarily go, but in fact, I don't think I ever have gone. But there's always good, as I understand, there's good discussions that do take place from time to time. Yeah, that's possible. I don't know. That's not my Akkadian's god's name was Sin. Yeah, who's the god of the moon. Yeah, I can see that. Toss it in a river. Yeah, it's very similar to the other thing. Pond season is open and your waterfall is running. Yeah, I know. It's still 71 here. It's 7 o'clock in the evening and it's still 71 degrees. And it's actually colder in my apartment than outdoors. That's the first time that's happened. But good to see you, Dave. But yeah, this guy, boy, I really try to think better of people, but this is so much of this video could be countered just by basic scholarship and just looking shit up. I think it's in the description of the video. So I'm trying to remember. Maybe Bren can put it in. He's a mod, so he can add it to the chat. So you know. Well, let's see what he finishes up with here.
Altogether, the evidence proves today's Bible consists of the same scriptures originally written thousands of years ago.
Only if you think popularity is a good evidence, and only if you think that if you're going to make the claim that no transcription changes has been made, even though there has been, only if you think that the Dead Sea Scrolls prove something true about the rest of the text just because we have the text together. Yeah, that's it. It's not good evidence. Okay, sorry. The evidence doesn't really support what this guy is saying. The real evidence is that we have a lot of transcription errors, we have scribal errors, we have longer endings and shorter endings, and we have all kinds of stuff that kind of indicates that people have been editing and changing the text of the Bible and continue to do so with translation work. It's just it's all over the place. So yeah, there's the link. I think it's in. You can get it off of the YouTube. And so, but Bren runs the Discord for me, the official Rabyd Atheist Discord. I let him run that because he's better at it than I am. Yeah, you can pretty much counter a lot of this stuff by listening to YouTube content creators like myself. I mean, I studied this in seminary and in Bible college, and it's like I would not make a video like this as a Christian because I know better. I could make the case that we have a well-preserved text, but the truth claims of the text are completely different than that. So thank you, Martin. I think that's 4. Still need 5 more to have a Saturday stream. So there's that. Yeah, thousands of years ago. Yeah, it's the Bart Ehrman illustrates it probably better. We have copies of copies of copies of copies, and somehow that proves the truth of something. You can have copies of copies of copies of copies of anything. It doesn't make it true. Okay, just copying something over and over again doesn't make it true. And with textual transgression, we have kind of a textual version of the game of telephone, because like a monk will get a hold of a text and not like the way something's presented and the way the theology comes off, and so they'll change the text. I think the longer ending of Mark came about because there was a monk that got frustrated. There's no resurrection story, there's no Christianity story, so they just throw the longer ending on and to make it have a better ending kind of thing. And the woman caught in adultery story, I think it was just a popular story that they decided to slide in there somewhere. And John seemed like a good place to put it. But it's, if you read the English text of like the end of chapter 7 into chapter 8, it's awkward. Okay. It's like an awkward phase, and you can tell it's added in by later manuscripts. So, yeah. Yeah, you can kind of counter a lot of it by reading it. But yeah, the thing about it is, and what they don't want to tell you, like I noticed that apologetics channels don't want to deal with the historicity of Moses very much because they know there's nothing there. Okay. And all they have is their Bible. But I think the writers of the Old Testament in 600 BC made up a lot of shit to fill the plot holes as they saw them, but it didn't really do that. Yeah, adultery is more of a gray zone thing now. Yeah, it is. I mean, as I think Christopher Hitchens said, adultery has its own consequences, so it certainly doesn't deserve a death sentence. So, but I also understand, having been in an affair myself, why people get to that mental state, and it can be a real stressful thing. So there's that. Northists don't check. You guys are going back and forth about the Australian thing, aren't you? Huh. Oh my gosh. Hey, Triple E, good to see you, man. How you doing? Yeah. So there's that. All right. I think this is the end of the video. Yeah, it just kind of goes into a fade. So, but yeah, that's Jesus films. Why you can trust the Bible. And I would have to a full evaluation would be this is like um, more propaganda than actual factual representation. Um, so there's that. Um, but he does a lot of what I would call the trope text arguments. We have a lot of text. We have copies of copies of copies. So therefore it's true. He does a bold-faced lie about um, how the modern translations are exactly the same as the original text. So one, they're translations, so they're not the same at all. But also, yeah, the transcription errors and stuff. He doesn't even deal with that problem. So, which is pretty typical. Yeah, I can see it when marriages are forced and arranged. I can also see it when you're in a marriage that was the result of your faith, and then you don't have that faith anymore. That was my problem. So, hey, thanks, Triple E. Thanks. I think Randy's got that one. So, congratulations, Randy. You have a membership, and you can now use Fang's Bunny as your emoji. There's an emoji of that I killed Earl did of Fang's Bunny, affectionately known as Fangs. Um, Here, so he's there. Sin was the father of the sun god Shamus. Sin was the product of rape of the goddess Nanil by the god of Enil, and was born in the underworld before ascending to the sky. Sound familiar? Yes, it does. Uh, I have long theorized that the writers of the Old Testament borrowed heavily from texts that they knew about to create their own mythology. Um, I would not be surprised if we don't find an ancient text of another mythology that has like something very similar to the name Moses in it. I would not be surprised by that at all. So there's that. Yeah. See, the only sadness I have about Fangs is I can't get him on StreamYard. I just get the text representation. That makes me sad. So, but yes, Fangs is our kind of our mascot around here. Uh, he's a cute little rabbit until you look at his teeth, and that's kind of how I do myself. So, so there's that. But yeah, I had the whole rabbit atheist has been fun because closed captioning butchers that every time. So yeah, I've heard this that it's a bastardization of another name, um, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't find like an ancient text of another mythology with the word Moses, the actual word Moses in it. Um, yeah, the problem with Moses is it's like this Egyptian name, so there's that. So that's kind of awesome for them. So it's it's uh it's interesting when you study other texts and other mythologies that were common at the time, how much they borrowed is very apparent. Can't live without. Yeah. Thank you, Triple E. I appreciate that very much, sir. Uh, I, I I do the best I can. I just so I just I do the best I can, doing with what I will. I've said this part of my story is like I'm making the best of a bad situation because I have all this knowledge and information that's now pretty useless to me unless I YouTube about it. So, taking my Bible and theology knowledge and putting it to good use, helping people out of the faith, I think is a good one. So, thank you so much. I appreciate your support of this channel, and I trust your own journey is going well. So, thank you so much. Uh, Welcome. Welcome. Yes, vampire bunnies. Easter's are near. I don't know if Earl's working on an Easter version of the Death Bunny or not, so we'll see. I haven't put any pressure on her, so she's not here tonight to ask. So, but I haven't put any pressure on her to do anything. She does good artwork, and I think part of it is it's really good when she's relaxed and just doing it for the joy of it. So that's where I try to keep her. Mammy sounds like a Florida thing. It's Mammy. Oh, so there's that. Son of an unknown father. Okay. I could buy that. And so maybe the Old Testament writers made it up to point out the son of an unknown father. So that's an interesting theory and probably valid. Oh my gosh. Wine is definitely not in the cup. Oh, yeah, the vampire rabbit thing, and you know, I suppose other content creators would have got offended by that, but I just decided to run with it. Okay, if it wants to call me the rabbit atheist, Rabbit, and the closed captioning, I guess I'll roll with that. So, and I had somebody mistakenly identify me as that once. So, yeah, he would have had to have been descendant of a pharaoh. Um, so, yeah, I can see where Moses being the son of an unknown father, and then Pharaoh just adopting him. I can see how that would work. Um, uh, Son of Toth. Yeah, it's possible. See, that's the thing about Moses is they don't want to give up on him. I've noticed that with theists, they just don't want to give up on Moses, but it's like there's no historical evidence in Egypt that such a person even existed. And the same is true for Joseph, that supposedly saved the country, and had his bones preserved to be brought into the country. It's like, you don't have any evidence of that. And that's kind of telling. Yeah, giving up on Moses is death to them. It's a everybody says, well, it's really bad for Judaism, but it's really also very bad for Christianity and Islam, because if Moses doesn't exist and Abraham doesn't exist, they got nothing. Okay, everything hangs on those characters. Moses is the lawgiver that the New Testament writers talk about, and they treat him as if he's a historical figure and that the law he gave was given by him. Um, without that, a lot of New Testament theology just disappears. So, yeah, that's the other problem that I had with the story. I brought that up to my professor when I was in seminary. It's like, didn't they live in the land of Goshen, which would have meant that it would have that you know in order to have the basket thing, they would have had to leave the land of Goshen, go upriver, and then do it. Okay, so it's like it doesn't make any sense um, from a river flow point of view. And so you're not expected to look into these stories that deeply, Rimmer. That's the thing. Okay, don't look at it that deep. Don't. These people were writing without a real knowledge of the area a lot of times, and they were writing with an absolute ignorance of the history of their own regions they were talking about. And so those kind of mistakes, yeah, it just happens. It's one of the reasons why you know that it's not true. That's how you do. So, but yeah. All right. I think that's it for me. I want to get to relaxing. Uh, yeah, this is the thing, Fred. If you don't have Moses, this is what you don't have. You have no Adam and Eve, no original sin, no need for redemption, no Christian religion. Um, you don't have any of that, and that's all gone. Yeah, they have to give the go ahead because if they're going to let other religious groups, they can't discriminate. So this is what Christians don't seem to realize when they want to have this stuff happen. If you do it, then everybody else can do it, and they don't want to accept that. So it's better if they just didn't do it in the first place. They really didn't. They're in Babylon, and everything they know about Egypt is propaganda because the Babylonians and the Egyptians are going at it all the time. And so, yeah, they just didn't really know anything. But yeah, I'm gonna call it a night, guys. Haven't gotten enough super chats to do a stream tomorrow yet, so but let's see. Yeah, it's got about 5 minutes left. We'll see what happens. So, but yeah, I'll probably take I'll work on some other stuff tomorrow. But yeah, it's been a really good look at the texts and the history of the Old Testament and New Testament world tonight. So thank you very much. I do appreciate all of you coming out tonight. I appreciate it. Earl is incredibly fashionably late. We were talking about Fang's Bunny earlier, so everybody seems to love Fangs. So, so there's that. But thanks, everybody. I'm going to call it a night. You guys, I hope you enjoyed the video tonight, but I do need to. I've got a much lighter week coming up, so there should be some interesting stuff coming up, hopefully. And I get a chance this time of year to kind of start making things go forward. It's okay. I want a Saturday off every once in a while so I can work on other things. So, but we'll do that again. We'll do that some other time. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate all of you. As always, live your best life. You only get one go around. It is absolutely necessary then that you take all your time, money, and energy, spend it on yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. Don't waste it on the trappings of religion and faith because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. Now, as always, everybody, thanks for stopping by. Hit the like button, and I will catch you next time.